Why are some people able to weightlift or do calisthenics every day? The answer to this question is simple. They have adapted to whatever they do to the point that they can do it every day. When I say training every day, I mean repeating the same movement pattern with a high frequency for 4 days per week or more. Example, doing handstand push-ups 4 times per week. For some people, doing handstand push-ups 4 times per week will be a recipe for injury, whereas others could do it without any problem at all. When you see somebody doing something really difficult or heavy, it doesn't come to mind that what he's doing is incorrect, or you don't ask why he can do it and you don't. You simply accept that other people are stronger. However, why don't we have the same perspective on volume or frequency? Most people will take guidelines on the amount of sets or the amount of days they should train as something literal and unbreakable, when in reality the amount of sets and the amount of days you can or should train is totally tied to your own body and your training. Your body is real, and whatever it can do is also real. The training you expose to it and the results of adapting to that training is also real. But the main thing is that without rest, adaptation cannot happen. Under this perspective, if rest is needed to adapt, then doing it 5 times per week is obviously counterproductive. You're simply not adapting because you don't have enough rest. But being able to do something so frequently means that whatever you are doing doesn't cause as much demand or rest. If somebody can do a movement pattern for 5 days per week, the likely thing is that he didn't just jump from 0 days per week to 5 days per week. In the same way that you don't jump from 0 pounds to 225 pounds in an exercise. It didn't happen from night to day. It was something slow. At some point, he became so much better and stronger that the amount of rest needed decreased. This is assuming that the load is not being increased over time. What is heavy for you might not be for them. Taking the example of the handstand push-up, one of the reasons why somebody might be able to train the same movement pattern is that he is simply stronger. If you struggle with handstand push-ups, then it means that it is heavy for you, whereas it might be light for him. On a rate of perceived exertion, a handstand push-up might be an 8 for you, meaning that you are between 3 to 5 reps. Under these circumstances, the load is too challenging for your joints and muscles, and the need for recovery is high. However, what if you could do 25 reps without any problem? Then you will probably land on a 4 to 5 on the scale. Under these circumstances, doing a handstand push-up will give you no challenge at all, unless taken to failure. Basically, you have totally got used to the load a handstand push-up gives you. As an example, if you can do 30 normal push-ups in a row, then it is very likely that you can do 4 sets of 5 reps of push-ups every day without any issues at all. Therefore, doing push-ups every day under certain circumstances is not crazy. Too much volume or frequency to you might not be for them. The difference between someone that can do high frequency and somebody that cannot do it is the adaptation to the specific load and the endurance that is built afterwards. For example, if you can do 12 consistent reps throughout your sets of handstand push-ups, then is the load the limiting factor anymore? If you can do 12 reps, then we can say that the load is not the limiting factor anymore. You will be developing endurance. Strength can be simply defined as torque. The heavier the load, the more torque needed, while endurance is the ability to consistently apply strength. Both strength and the ability to consistently apply it are connected and inseparable, but you can definitely train them in a way that biases one or the other. High rep will bias endurance increase, whereas low rep, high load will bias strength increase. When you increase your amount of sets, reps, or frequency, you are developing your endurance, and increasing your endurance will make your recovery better and your efficiency better. In other words, increasing endurance will allow you to do more volume more frequently with less issues. There is something paradoxical about increasing frequency. On one hand, doing it more days will mean that there is less time to rest. However, the body heals faster when a specific movement pattern is repeatedly done very frequently. You can simply test this when doing an exercise you have never done and you are not used to, and compare the recovery time it takes with an exercise you always do. You will always recover faster on the exercise you always do if both are equally done at the same effort. The more frequent you are, the more you repeat the exercises, and the more natural they become. The more you do them, the more your body is used to the specific resistance profile and the strength curves. The recruitment of the muscle and joint is better, and you are more efficient. Another reason why somebody can do more frequency than you is the sacrifice of exercise and volume. Somebody that is more frequent than you might sacrifice volume from other exercises to reduce the amount of total rest needed, or they might adjust the amount of sets they do according to their feeling. Not only that, but the effort can also be adjusted across those 4 to 5 days. They might train the same exercise 4 or 5 days per week, but at different levels of effort. If you were to only do one exercise for the rest of your life, how frequent could you be and how good would your recovery be? And if you also manage your daily sets according to your feelings, then doing the same movement pattern 4 to 5 days per week doesn't seem that crazy. Different approaches to training and different perspective can also make this perspective on frequency look like crazy. From a muscle building perspective, training 4 to 5 days per week the same exercise seems like the worst thing you could do, because it will mean that you're also training the same muscle muscles over and over. And if you want to develop muscle as your main goal, then you will want to reach failure or really close to it, at least in the majority of your sets. This means that all those sets that were taken to failure will require at least 1 or 2 days of rest, making the training of the same exercise 4 to 5 days per week unlikely. Also, if their goal is to build muscle, then they will perform many more movement patterns, train more muscle groups, and do more exercises overall, which will also require more rest. From an only strength perspective, the high lows will also require you to rest every 1 or 2 days per workout. A person that can do an exercise or movement pattern 4 to 5 days per week might be absolutely stronger than you at that specific movement. His endurance at that specific movement is also really high or exceptional. He has repeated it so much that the movement is highly efficient and natural for him. He sacrifices other muscle groups or exercises to accommodate volume. And lastly, he specifically avoids being at an 8th rate of perceived exertion or something that will cause him a lot of rest. These are the reasons why I believe some people can be way more frequent than others. However, this video is not meant to say that you should train like that, but it is simply an explanation why some people are able to train like that.